Hello everyone and welcome back to QuicksaveTV. And this series of Skyrim tutorials, we're gonna talk about, in this episode of this series, we're gonna talk about two-handed weaponry. I just finished the video about one-handed weapons and it was just a mess because I had so much weaponry had to be selected. Now it's much more organized. We're gonna again talk about the skill itself, which is really similar to one-handed weapons. If you watch the one-handed weapons, you're not gonna find out too much from this, but still would be interesting for you to watch. I am going to make it interesting for you to watch. Let's go to two-handed weapons. So we start with Barbarian. Two-handed weapons do 20% more damage. Okay, again, if you want to be efficient and effective, you should spend you should max it out to 5 to get 100% increased damage, because they want to increase your damage output by 2 times. Actually, it's very important to have. Then we have the champion stance. Power attacks with two-handed weapons cost 25% less stamina. This one is very important. Excuse me for that. This one is very important because the two-handed weapons in general consume a lot of stamina to use. So any decrease on the stamina consumption or regeneration of stamina, increased regeneration of stamina, would be really effective. Very useful. Then we have Devastating Blow. Standing power attacks do 25% bonus damage with a chance to decapitate your enemies. Okay, again, very strong attacks. Again, when you stand, you will be able to deal 25% more damage with power attacks. And decapitate a little bonus for you if you like it. Then we have Great Critical Charge. Can do a two-handed power attack while sprinting that does double critical damage. Again, in my playstyle, I don't really like this skill, and I wouldn't take it because I don't really use it all that often. But for people who like, where is this ability? Deep Wounds, I think. Yes, attacks with Greatsword have a 10% chance of doing critical damage. So we have 30% of doing critical damage on the 3rd level for Greatswords, and so we charge at the enemy and we deal twice the critical damage. Now think about it, it's very strong, right? If you like the sword, if you favor the sword, the ability here to the left, if you want to stay mobile and deal a lot of damage, it will be really powerful for you. That does double critical damage. It's just devastating. It's very interesting, very devastating attack. But only if you use a sword, again, very important. Then we have Sweep. Sideways power attack with two-handed weapons, hit all targets in front of you. I would say that it's a waste of a skill point, in all honesty, because you will be able to survive without Sweep, but again, there's not going to be a lot of cases in which you will be able to use Sweep. Whenever you're going to be attacked by several enemies, you will be able to deal with them one by one, but it's just my experience. Maybe it's very useful for you, so I'm just going to go ahead and describe it. When you do sideways attack, you're going to hit all the enemies in front of you, but be careful not to hit allies, because they might turn hostile after that. And so we go ahead up to War Master. Backwards power attack has 25% chance to paralyze the target. Again, just like in one-handed weaponry, this power attack, backwards power attack, is very hard to perform, very difficult to execute while actually hitting the enemy. It's much easier with two-handed weapons because the blade, the weapon itself, is much longer, the reach is much longer, much further, so it might be easier to execute, but it's still very hard, very hard, just like in Oblivion. And here it's the same, but in Oblivion we had the Masters was forward attack. You would you would attack the enemy while moving forward, and it would be really easy to hit the enemy to paralyze him. Here it's very hard because you have to perform a backwards attack. But again, the chance to paralyze the enemy if you do is 25%. It's just gigantic, right? In bows, in archery, we have 15% and it still happens all the time. Here we have 25%. I mean, what else do you need? Now let's talk about swords, axes, and maces. Okay, again, just as mentioned in the one-handed weapon tutorial, we have the segregation of the weaponry on the next classes: swords, axes, and maces. In case of two-handed weaponry, we have two-handed swords. They are called great swords. Two-handed axes, they're called, I think, war axes. I don't want to mislead you. War axes. And we have war hammers, war maces. Deep Wounds is for great swords. It has a 30% chance to do a critical damage, right? Of doing critical damage. It's very how should I put it? I really don't like this critical idea, except for when you're doing backstabs, right? But these Deep Wounds work very well with Great Critical Charge because of the way it operates, right? Every time you're gonna charge at your enemy with the sword, 30% of the time you're just gonna deal tremendous amount of damage. So it would be like really useful, but I don't know how useful it's gonna be because you'll have to charge at your enemy all the time. You'll have to have heavy armor for that to survive, or very well spec'd light armor just to live long enough to do that. And you'll have to have a lot of stamina just to spend it like this all the time. However, greatsword again will consume the least stamina out of all them. Oh, I should probably talk about it. Swords, axes, and maces. Swords, great swords, consume the least stamina, deal least damage, and have the highest speed of attack. The axes are in between of those two. They deal medium damage, they have medium speed, battle axes, and they consume medium amount of stamina for power attacks. And maces, war maces and war hammers, ignore. No, that's not what I wanted to say. They have the slowest speed of attack, the highest damage output, and the largest stamina consumption. Okay, now go back to the axes. Okay, axes have the ability for them in two-handed, the limb splitter. Attacks with battle axes cause extra bleeding damage. That would be personally again my favorite for two-handed weapons. Why? Because you don't have to stand in front of your enemy all the time to deal damage. You hit once, you can move away, enemy gonna bleed out. Hit him again, he gonna bleed out, right? So it gives you additional opportunities to leave your enemy, to leave the battle for some minutes, some moments, to heal yourself, to apply some poisons, to heal, to eat a potion. I mean, drink a potion, eat a potion, yeah, eat the glass bottle. Yeah, it allows you to use additional strategies like this when you use an axe, because you still deal damage even when you don't hit the enemy. And now we have the great maces, the war maces and war hammers, which ignore 75% of the enemy's armor. So now this is probably the most damage output ability for two-handed, if your stamina can allow it, because the war hammers, they consume the most stamina. If you can allow it yourself, you will be able to deal a lot of damage. A lot of damage. It's very simple. Okay, now let's start with great swords, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So, great swords consume the least stamina to attack the enemy. They are very practical, very easy to fight with, easy to attack with. And again, it's a two-handed weapon, right? Don't forget, it's going to be slow no matter what. But in general, two-handed weapons, when you attack the enemy behind the shield, you have higher chance of staggering the enemy, breaking his block and everything, unlike with the one-handed weaponry where, the chance is really slim. That's with the sword. Okay, let's continue to the axe. I am supporting the axe. My axe is obviously better. The sword was bought just for this tutorial. Now, the axe is of medium characteristics. It's not extremely powerful and it's not extremely fast. So we have the mace extremely fast and extremely mace extremely slow and extremely powerful, and a sword extremely fast and extremely weak, right? The axe is in between of them, and axe really wins because of this ability. The how was it called? Cutting limbs. How was it called? The ability called limb splitter. Yeah, because the enemy will bleed out. Notice how you're kind of slow with an axe. Using the limb splitter, you don't need to compromise. You just can hit the enemy once, move away, heal yourself, right? Just go ahead, heal yourself. Excuse me for that. Heal yourself. Take the axe again, attack the enemy. Very easy to do. These things are very easy to do. Because you don't need to stay in front of your enemy all the time. You're also not so exposed to damage, right? Very good stuff. And then we have warhammers. Warhammers are designed to tear the enemy to shreds really quick, really fast, without spending a lot of time. Because of their ignoring the armor ability, you'll be able to deal a lot of damage, almost maximum damage, every strike you make. So you should just focus on power attacks and tear the enemy to shreds. But the idea is that you're gonna run out of your stamina very quick. For this, the restoration spells will support you very much. There's a ability, perk in restoration, my personal favorite, which is called Respite. I'm just gonna go ahead and show you. Healing spells also restore stamina. So when you have the respite on your healing, when you run out of stamina, you don't have to drink potions or anything. Just go ahead and use some of your magic in order to restore your stamina and keep attacking again. That's very useful in any fighting school, especially for two-handed and dual one-handed. And you should use it. Now let's talk about little tricks which we can think about. So great sword would probably work the best with heavy armor, because you will do these attacks anyway, these follow-up strong attacks in front of you, right? Using the abilities for the sword. So you can just go ahead and use the heavy armor because you're gonna be in the front line all the time. You should be well defended. So you kind of like become a heavily armored wasp. Because the great sword doesn't do so much damage. It does deal a lot of damage. It's just in comparison to maces and axes, it's not so strong. Then with an axe, it probably would be a really strong idea to use any kind of armor. However, well, I don't think anything influences the axe so much, because you can just hit the enemy, move away. You don't have to use heavy armor, but you don't have to use light armor either. I mean, you can use any of them, but don't forget the heavy armor is much heavier and it slows you down a little bit when worn, much more than light armor. But with the perks in heavy armor, which I'm going to talk about in another video, you will be able to overcome it. Now we have the maces. With the maces, I would argue the best solution is to wear light armor. Why? Because you're going to be fast, and in light armor there is some abilities which restore your stamina faster. Let's go ahead and check them out. Where's light armor? Where's that? Okay, light armor. We have. Forget all this stuff. We have Windwalker. Stamina regenerates 50% faster in all light armor. Head, chest, hands, feet. This is unbelievably good because not only you have additional 50% stamina regeneration, you're fast, and you can deal additional power attacks because of this. Let's go ahead to heavy armor. What does it have interesting? Deflect, armor bonus, unarmed, cushioned. Okay, heavy armor doesn't have this ability. Light armor's the only advantage light armor has above heavy armor is the stamina regeneration. That's the only one advantage, one serious advantage. So anyone who uses the mace should consider it, or instead of doing it, just go ahead, take the restoration spells and just use the respite in order to restore your stamina. Very, very good stuff. Okay, on this, we're going to conclude this video. I hope I didn't forget anything. Okay, let's not conclude. Let's just summarize everything we said. We have in two-handed weaponry, just like in one-handed weaponry, we have 3 types of weapons: swords, axes, maces. Swords are fastest and least hitting, right? And they are oriented for critical hits. Axes are of medium attack, medium speed, and medium stamina consumption. And they cause the bleeding damage, which allows you to deal damage even when you don't directly engage the enemy all the time. And we have the Skull Crusher, the maces, which have the slowest attack speed, highest attack, and largest stamina consumption, and they ignore 75% of your enemy's armor, which allow you to tear the enemy apart to pieces like really, really quick. And of course, yeah, there's nothing else interesting. And of course, what else to say? That would be it. Actually, that would be it. Just the differences. In order to select the best weapon for you, you have to remember these specifics. You have to remember the abilities such as Limb Splitter, how's it called, Skull Crusher, the critical damage from swords, the bleeding from axes, and the damage ignoring from maces. It's a completely opposite approaches. My personal favorite is an axe because it allows me to stay mobile, just hit everyone a little bit, so let them bleed out, and don't really engage with them. That allows me more opportunity to deal with archers. For you, it might be much better to use a greatsword because you are faster, because you hit harder, you hit faster, you don't consume as much stamina, because you deal critical hits, maybe you like them. So it's just, you know, it's a matter of taste. I'm just saying that what I personally prefer. The End of War Mace, the War Hammer, again, a great weapon if you consider that if you can stay in front of your enemy at all times, right? If you will be able to smash him really, really quick because of this damage ignoring. No matter how armored the enemy is, he's gonna fall apart in front of you because of this weaponry. Okay, thank you. On this, we're gonna conclude the video. I thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the video about the two-handed weaponry. Stay tuned for more tutorials about Skyrim, and check out my other playlists on the channel about Skyrim lore and Skyrim adventuring. If you enjoyed the video, enjoyed the content, go ahead, like, subscribe, and share with your friends. It was great having you here, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.